are talking tonight about the end of the school year and things that we need to take care of, things to do, just all the things. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Shannon Kiebler. I'm the moderator of this group, our Facebook group, Math Expressions Users. If you're joining us on Facebook, hello. If you're joining us on our website, glad that you're here. Either way, we're glad you're here, and we're talking specifically about what we can do in our math classrooms and as teachers and leaders in the end of the year. So the last month matters. I know. I'm tired too. Our kids are tired. You're tired. We're tired. We're all tired. But there are some things that we can do even in a tired phase to make this last month or so of school really matter and get the most out of it. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to talk about the end of year readiness standards, which standards are the most important, the ones to follow up on. We're going to talk about preparing students for the next school year. So some of the things we can do to wrap up this year, but also start thinking about next year. And then what teachers and principals can be doing right now to make the end of the year nice and tidy and to be ready for when you come back. So let's first talk about the readiness standards. If you're not familiar with the readiness standards, you want to go to Delta Math OASID. So Delta Math has a 6th grade math program. If you just Google Delta Math, it's going to come up with the 6th grade program. You specifically want the one out of Michigan. It's called OASID, Delta Math. You can just Google it. You can Google it, the readiness standards, and you're going to find these readiness standards on their website. And I can also send you the link. So if you just want the direct link to the PDF document that has all the different grade levels, say readiness standards, so I know what you want, we'll make sure that we get that link to you. But these standards were created actually alongside of a group of teachers, a group of leaders, and Dr. Karen Fusen, who is the Math Expressions author, that came up with this list of standards that if we were to say, what are the most essential standards in numbers, base 10, and fractions that our students need to be ready for the next grade level? Okay, what would those top around 8 standards be? So that's what these readiness standards are. Now, it's important to note that they do not include any geometry and measurement. That does not mean that geometry and measurement is unimportant. In fact, that's one of my key thoughts for today is that you got to get those units in. Geometry is really starting to suffer from teachers not getting to it. So whether that's in 1st grade, we don't get to that unit, or it's in 2nd grade or in 3rd grade, it doesn't matter. We're rushing either to fit it in prior to the state test, and then we're not really teaching it to the fullness of the standards, or we're so behind in our pacing, we're not getting to it at all. And I'm really seeing it impact 5th and 6th grade. It all just falls to pieces in 6th grade if they have not had geometry since 1st grade. Those standards are really important. But with that, when we look at the readiness standards, that does not mean that when you don't see them on this list that I think they're unimportant. They are. It's just when they chose to do the readiness standards, they chose to do them based on numbers in base 10 and on fractions. Okay, so when you look at here, I'm going to make it nice and big for you. I want you to see what you're going to get. So again, just say readiness standards and I'm happy to send it over to you. It tells you, it says grade 1 readiness, but notice that it says kindergarten. So it says KCC 5, right? So that means it's a kindergarten standard. So even though it says grade 1, it means here's the kindergarten standards students need to be mastered with to be ready for grade 1. Okay, so it's count up to 20 objects, compare numbers 10. So here are the most important ones. If you look at grade 2, it says these are the standards 1st graders would need to be mastered on to be ready for 2nd grade. And as you go, you're going to notice it has readiness standards all the way through Algebra 1. So it's a really nice comprehensive list. And I use it 2 different ways. One is I use the list in the fall when I'm trying to figure out what order of standards I should be focusing on for intervention. So I'm saying, hey, I have this 2nd grader who is not on grade level. Which standards do I need to be intervening on in order for them to be ready for me? And so I go back and I look at those readiness standards and I start intervening on those 1st grade. Now, this time of year, I start using them differently because I'm thinking, what standards do I need to make sure I have full mastery in? Or I need to go back and reinforce, or if I'm behind in my pacing, which ones do I'm like, okay, do or die, I got to get these in. Okay, that's this list. So I think this list will be really helpful to you if you deem them in that light, and think about where you want to focus on with these students. But paired with that is also this idea that you don't want to miss those geometry standards. So first and foremost, you need to finish strong. Whatever's happening, I know I've talked to many of you in the last 2 weeks as I've worked with your schools, and we've talked a lot about just you're in the midst of state testing. And so it feels like, okay, state testing's over, I'm over. Like I'm done with math instruction. I'm like, no, you're not. Okay. So we know that we had to rush through things to get to state standards. We had to condense some things to get to our state's testing. Now is the time to go back and to emphasize those. So I want you to think about finishing strong some of those units. It doesn't matter if you already did the homework pages or you already did the workbook pages. Go back and re-emphasize those lessons, teach them again. Your students got a very rushed version of it. There's no harm in going back. So we want to finish those strong. I want you to prioritize the readiness standards as needed. And then always some of the things that we can do to make sure we're sending off the strongest students to the next grade level is to have a re-emphasis on our math facts and making sure that for our specific grade levels, for our math facts, we are sending strong students. That means a lot of math fact games. That means revisiting even especially like third grade. I mean, third grade, you worked on multiplication and division in unit 1 and 2. Now, you've been doing multiplication and division in all your subsequent units, but really you left like the heat of it back after unit 2. We can't do that. It takes kids all year long to master those facts. So even if they got mastered on their multiplication division facts through 12 by 12 at the end of unit 2, you're going back to them and you're seeing, can they remaster them again? Because most of them have lost a lot of it. So if they've lost a lot of it in just this school year, imagine what happens when they get to 4th and 5th grade. That same goes true or stays true for first grade. You have some massive addition and subtraction facts. They have to know their addition subtraction facts to 10, and then they're working on facts to 20, but they have to know with recall, adding and subtracting, which for most of you subtracting is the issue, right? To go into second grade. Second grade starts so hard. They start right away with assuming your first graders have those facts down and they can work on derived facts through their team numbers. I would say most second grade teachers agree they don't have those. And so unit 1 starts with a bang and it's really difficult for them. So we want to make sure we wrap up those standards. Second grade, same thing. Your addition, subtraction facts to 20, they really need to have those solidly. Okay, until sending them into third grade. It's kind of done for a year. Third grade does very little with addition, subtraction facts, and fourth grade picks them up with a vengeance. So third grade needs to have the confidence to be able to start with multiplication and division. And oftentimes they see the students coming in and they get scared and like, they can't do multiplication. We have to start with addition. I'm like, that's not true. Actually, kids that don't know addition can also do multiplication and they're highly successful at it. I know it feels weird, okay, but it is possible. So second grade, just do due diligence and make sure they are strong in those multiplication or those addition and subtraction facts. Okay, so last month of school then. So you might be thinking to yourself that, okay, what if I am like a first grade teacher and I'm finished? Like I really feel like I taught the units well, we got mastery along the way, but I'm just finished. It is very common for first grade because first grade has probably the most lax of all the pacing guides. And so they tend to, a lot of first grade teachers I know, they tend to finish almost a month early. So if that's the case, what do we do? Or if you're one of the other grades that really feels like you were just able to fly, you taught conceptually, kids could build, draw, write, talk about every concept. You did not just focus on algorithms or procedures. Maybe you just have a class that could go at a higher pace. If this is you, then what are you going to do the last month of school? Okay, it is not like movie time. We want to make the most out of this time. So here's a list of ideas you may want to include, whether it's you have a month left, you have 2 weeks left, and you find yourself with extra time. So inquiry task cards, a lot of us didn't use those from our, if you're in the 2018 version, you have inquiry task cards. It comes in that red trifold, or you can get them on Think Central. And you could go grab those from every unit. They're more like performance task-ish, more hands-on, more open-ended. They'd be great projects for the end of the year. Performance tasks are on Think Central. They're in your assessment guide, no matter which version you have of expressions. Everyone has performance tasks. It's just a matter of which copyright you're in as to where it might be located. But all of them, either in the assessment guide or on Think Central, you can find the performance tasks. Again, these are more open-ended. They're more project-based. They're fun for students to do. If you you let them do them in like collaborative groups. Puzzle penguin problems, I like to encourage people to go grab all those puzzle penguin problems from each unit or from the units that you feel like they need a little extra oomph, and you redo the puzzle penguin problems. You have students write their own puzzle penguin problems. Remember, error analysis is a really effective strategy for teaching those higher depth of knowledge skills and to revisit concepts where students may not recognize the error right away. You can use those puzzle penguin problems. The remembering side of the homework, if you didn't get all of those throughout the year, if you've not been doing them religiously, bring them on back. They're really good review pages that spiral all the content you've learned thus far. And then last, as we've talked already, the math fact games. Okay, so anything we can do now as we're losing student engagement, student interest, I say just play more games, and all of those will really help with their math facts as well. All right, let's focus on our teachers. Okay, so teachers, here's some things that I like to suggest as you are starting to think about your end of the year. One is I would keep supplies. So it's starting about now towards the end of the May. I know some of you go to like the end of June where you start cleaning house and you start like wrapping up some of the materials that you have, throwing out old crayons, whatever. I'm going to encourage you not to do that. Keep some of those supplies because they work really well for counting collections when we get to unit 1. So we want kids to figure out like how many crayons do we have? And if you're in 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade, it can be a fraction count where kids are like, well, I have a half a crayon and a half a crayon. Well, half and half is a whole, and then I got a fourth and I got a fourth, right? Like they are able to count. And if you're not familiar with counting collections, look them up. One of my favorite things to do, I would do it in every single grade level. It's a great end of the year activity. It's a great beginning of the year, all year long. But my supplies are really good for counting. Like if I only have partially full glue containers or glue sticks, it's still an object to be counted. I can keep it in a tub and I can reuse that. Now, some of you may not want to go that far with like glue or whatever, but the crayon thing is great for counting collections. So I like to keep those particular materials to have things to count. Keep your whiteboards. So my suggestion is always you keep your whiteboards from this year so that you have whiteboards to send home at the beginning of next year. So for most of you, it should be true that your math expressions whiteboard comes new every year when you get new workbooks. So if your school is buying student workbooks, pre-packaged is also a student whiteboard. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, but in general, that is true for all of you. Okay, so I like to keep this year's whiteboards and I have my students clean them and whatnot. Then when I get the new class next year, I send home this year's whiteboard with them so they have a whiteboard to use at home, and then they get their new whiteboard for class. Then end of the year, I keep their old ones, I give it to the next group. So I kind of just keep recycling them so students always have a whiteboard at home and in class. All right, the next thing I have for them is making decisions on workbooks. So as you are wrapping up, I am generally an advocate of not sending home the workbooks. I think it's opening a can of worms. I think you're kind of asking for trouble in one way or the other. I think one is they're going to see pages that aren't done and I'm like, what did you do this year? Doesn't your teacher do anything? Why do you have all these problems undone? When I didn't need all the workbook problems, I purposely did not do all the workbook problems. We did a lot of work on our whiteboards. Okay, so that could be one thought that the parents have. Now I have to justify why we didn't do all the workbook. 2, I have those really driven parents that are going to, basically punish their child all summer long by making them finish the workbook. So anything that's not done, that's summer work. Now, some of you might think that's positive. I don't tend to think it goes very well at home when we do that. Up to you, but it's another reason I don't send them home. So you choose. I think the recycling bin is generally a better place for that. Or I like to keep some of the workbooks, just a couple, so that if I have a student who leaves and they never come back and they took their workbook, or they go on vacation and I don't want them to take their real workbook, so I give them like the backup pages. You can have a parent help you tear out the pages that weren't used and file them by lesson so you have extra copies of those workbook pages. You do you, but consider the pros and the cons of sending home that workbook. All right, use students to help find, count, organize math manipulators for the beginning of the year. So instead of you taking that home as a summer project, why not turn it into a counting collection or project for class now? If you have additional time in your pacing, this is a good time for our first graders to line up your stair steps from 1 to 10. As anyone who has a complete set, they raise their hand, we make sure we group them, we put them in their Ziploc bag, we zip it and we put it in the completed bin. If you have a missing set, we like go hunting and finding for those missing lost and found pieces, so I can mark those bags so we know this is not a complete set. We're still trying to find the 5, the 6, the 3, whatever it might be. They're yellow number cards. Put your yellow cards in order from 1 to 10. Do we have them all? Purple tiles from kindergarten. All of those things you're thinking about. What is unit 1? What am I going to need? 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, 2nd grade, secret code cards. It's time to rally the troops, friends. We got to find the secret code cards, but we need to make complete sets. It is a great number sense activity to have kids sort, organize, and count those cards. Last but not least, for our teachers, then we're going to get to our leaders. The last suggestion I have for our teachers is to make pacing notes. Your memory will not be as good as you think it's going to be next year. You're not going to remember when you get to unit 3 what happened. So now is the time to go make some notes about how you needed extra time in that unit, or you took a shortcut in this unit, or don't forget to go grab the extra materials from your teammate for that unit. I would make pacing notes now while your memory is fresh about what you want to change when you do your backward planning for next year. And so you can fit in everything that you want to fit in. All right, last, friends, our leaders. Leaders, it's your turn. Okay, this is for you too. So on June 12th, I'm going to be doing our leadership workshop. So even if you're a teacher right now listening, we are looking for teacher leaders and for school groups. So it kind of just depends on who comes, who they bring. I've had all sorts of things. So I've had school districts that come and they bring the principal from every school. You come, you meet either in a room physically with your district people, and then you join me on a Zoom room, or everyone comes in on their own Zoom rooms and you still meet me in my Zoom room, and then I send you out to breakout rooms and stuff. I've had schools come where the schools have the principal, they have an instructional coach, they have a team leader from every grade level or from K2 and then 3-5, they bring their team. I've had so many different unique combinations of leaders for this leader workshop. So this will be our third year doing this workshop. And the goal of it is that you are thinking right now, what went well, what didn't go well, what needs to be our goal for next year. You're not waiting. I know you're burned out, but right now you're the most frustrated by things. You can see so clearly what didn't work. You can see where the needs are at. Okay, you have all this end of the year data. You got to use it now. So what I do is I walk teams through a process of deciding what's your math vision, what do you hope to see, what are your goals, what does your data say you need to have a focus on, and then I give you the parameters and questions that help you decide, is it an implementation issue, is it a standard issue, a content issue, a PD issue, like what's the issue, and you and your team work through all of those types of questions and you create a plan for next year. Now, if your plan includes me, great, I will help you with that. But for some teams, it's not. It's just they needed my help coming up with their plan, and they're going to run their own PD and their own plan for the year. But creating that plan now, pretty good, okay? I've never had a team regret coming. I give you change models. We talk about how to move teachers through change. If you're new to expressions, you're adopting for the first time, you're piloting, or you're refreshing your copyright, now's the time to refresh the norms for what's expected for implementation. I will help you to know what that is and give you a change cycle to help you help teachers through the change. We come up with our goals. We come up with our PD cycle. I promise you it's effective if you follow it. So principals, school leaders, district leaders, you're going to grab your team. I want you to register. It's May 29th and June 12th. We have made it really cost effective because I just really want people there. Okay, so I'm not charging nearly what it's probably worth because it's so important to me that we have school leaders who are prepared to lead instructional change in their buildings. So if you're interested in that, just comment or send me a DM, send me an email. You can also just go to our website, www.empowerlearngrow.com. You'll see that there's 2 dates there to choose from, or you can always register and get the replay, totally up to you. But showing up live there's a bunch of good material you get if you come live. So again, if you want more information, it's called the Leadership Workshop. It's on my website, empowerlearngrow.com, or just reply, comment, DM, whatever, and we will get you the link for you to sign up. All right, my friends. So tonight, this is what we talked about. We talked about how to finish strong for the school year. We talked about the teacher role, the principal role, the last month of school, the things to do to finish strong, and we talked about the readiness standards. All of those things in your last month. So whether you have 6 weeks of school left, 8 weeks, or you're down to the last 2 to 3, like my students, here we go. All right, my friends, thanks again for joining us. We're so glad that you're here. We will see you next week on Math Crush Monday. Bye for now.